Welcome to Hearths of Myths. Tonight, the air is thick. It is not the dry, crisp cold of the north that we have explored before, but a heavy, humid weight that presses against the skin. It is the kind of air that precedes a typhoon, where the sky turns a bruised purple and the wind carries the scent of salt, wet earth, and sulfur. Close your eyes. Settle into the darkness. Let the modern world dissolve into the mist. We are traveling to the far edge of the east. We are traveling to the archipelago of the dragonflies. We are traveling to the land of the rising sun, before the sun had even risen. Tonight, we begin the saga of the drummer, the god of the thunder, the master of the static charge, Raijin. But to understand the thunder, one cannot simply look up at the clouds. In the cosmology of the Japanese islands, the thunder did not descend from the heavens like a gift of grace. It rose from the earth. It was born from the rotting corpse of a goddess in the darkest pit of the underworld. It is a story of love, of horrifying death, and of a scream that shattered the silence of the primeval void. Before we can hear the drums of Raijin, we must hear the weeping of his father and the burning of his mother. We must witness the creation of death itself. Listen closely. Can you hear the silence? Before the islands of Japan existed, before the concept of Japan or Wa was whispered by history, there was only the floating oil. The Kojiki, the record of ancient matters, tells us that the universe was a chaotic, oily mass, like a jellyfish floating on the surface of water. It was silent. It was formless. Heaven and earth were not yet fully separated. They were a soup of potential energy waiting for a catalyst. From this silent ocean, deities emerged, but they were singular, lonely beings who hid their bodies in the reeds, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. They were the Kotoa Matsukami, the separate heavenly deities, and they watched in silence as the cosmos waited for structure. Then, the command was given. The elder gods summoned two beings, two divine siblings. The male was named Izanagi, he who invites. The female was named Izanami, she who is invited. They were young, beautiful, and terrifyingly powerful, for they carried within them the potential for all biological life. The elders gave them a tool. It was not a hammer, nor a sword, but a spear. The Ame no Nuboko, the jeweled spear of heaven. It was encrusted with precious stones, shimmering with the starlight of the high heavens, a tool of creation meant to stir the chaos into order. Imagine them standing there, on the Ame no Ukihashi, the floating bridge of heaven. Below them lies the dark, oily, chaotic ocean of the void. Izanagi holds the spear. He looks at Izanami, and without a word, they understand their task. He lowers the jeweled tip into the brine below. He begins to stir. The sound is a low, churning resonance. Kaworo, kaworo. It is the sound of thickening, the sound of coagulation. He stirs until the liquid begins to curdle, until the chaos begins to find a center. When he lifts the spear from the water, the brine that drips from the tip does not fall back into the ocean. It hardens. It piles up. It forms an island. This is Onogoro, the self-curdling island, the first solid ground in the universe. Izanagi and Izanami descend from the bridge. Their feet touch the wet, new earth. It is silent here, save for the lapping of the primordial waves against the shore. They are alone in a vast ocean, standing on a small rock of their own making. But they are creators. They do not build a house of wood. They build a house of ritual. They erect a great pillar, the heavenly pillar, in the center of the island. And they build a hall, the hall of 8 fathoms. It is here that the first marriage and the first tragedy will take place. They devise a ritual to populate this new world. They will walk around the pillar. Izanagi will walk from the left, Izanami from the right. When they meet on the other side, they will speak, and through their union, the lands will be born. They walk. The air is tense with the magic of creation. They meet. Izanami, overcome with the joy of seeing her counterpart, speaks first. "How delightful," she says, "to meet a lovely young man." Izanagi responds, "How delightful to meet a lovely young woman." They lie together. But the ritual was flawed. The woman had spoken first. In the ancient, ordered mind of the chroniclers, this disruption of the active and passive principles caused a corruption. Their first child was a leech, a boneless, shapeless thing called Hiruko. They placed the child in a boat of reeds and set it adrift, a sorrowful failure cast out into the dark currents. Their second child was the foam island, equally unstable. They returned to the heavens. They asked for wisdom. The elders told them, the man must speak first. They returned to Onogoro. They walked the pillar again. This time, when they met, Izanami remained silent until Izanagi spoke. "How delightful to meet a lovely young woman." Then she responded. The order was restored, and from this union the true birth began. And what a birth it was! They did not give birth to babies. They gave birth to geography. They gave birth to the great 8 islands: Awaji, Shikoku, Oki, Kyushu, Iki, Tsushima, Sado, and finally the main island, Honshu. Imagine the physical toll of this. Izanami is not merely pregnant. She is the vessel for mountains, for valleys, for rivers. As she births these lands, the mists rise, the forests sprout from the soil, the rivers carve their paths through the rock. The silence of the void is replaced by the sounds of wind, of rushing water, of settling stone. They birth the gods of the wind, the trees, the mountains, and the sea. The world is becoming lush. It is becoming green. It is becoming loud with life. But every creation casts a shadow, and the shadow of this lush, green world was growing inside Izanami's womb. It is now the moment that defines the Japanese concept of death and pollution. Izanami is pregnant with her final child. The labor begins. But this is not like the others. The air in the hall of 8 fathoms grows hot. The moisture on the walls evaporates instantly. The stone floor becomes painful to touch. Izanami screams. It is a scream that tears through the fabric of the newborn world. She is giving birth to Hai no Kagutsuchi, the incarnation of fire. As the child emerges, he is not flesh and blood. He is flame. He is magma. He is the destructive heat of the volcano. As he passes through her birth canal, he burns her. He chars her flesh. He destroys the very vessel that created him. The Kojiki describes this with a visceral, unflinching horror. Izanami, the mother of all, is burned from the inside out. She lies on the floor of the hall, her divine body blackened, smoking, her life force draining away into the stones. In her agony, her body reacts violently. She vomits. And from her vomit, deities are born, the gods of metal and mining, born from the mixture of heat and fluid. She loses control of her bowels, and from her excrement, deities of clay and earth are born. She urinates in pain, and from her urine, the goddess of irrigation and the water deity are born. Even in her dying, she is creating. Even in her destruction, she is fertile, but it is a frantic, painful fertility. It is the fertility of fever. Izanagi kneels beside her. He crawls to her head. He weeps. His tears fall onto her charred face, and even his tears become deities. The crying, weeping goddess lives in the fountain of his grief. He begs her to stay. "My lovely younger sister," he whispers, "the lands we were making are not yet finished. You cannot leave me." But the barrier has been crossed. Izanami looks at him with eyes that are fading, reflecting a world he cannot see. "I am sorry," she whispers. "I have eaten at the hearth of Yomi." She dies. The silence that follows is heavier than the silence of the void. It is the silence of loss. Izanami, the beautiful creator, is gone. Her body, now a husk of burnt flesh, is lifeless. This is the first death in the cosmos. Until this moment, death did not exist. There was only coming into being. Now, there is passing away. Izanagi has introduced mortality to the universe through his love. He buries her on Mount Hiba, at the boundary of the land of Izumo, but he cannot accept it. He wanders the new islands they made together, but they look gray to him. The green forests mock him. The rivers sound like weeping. He looks at the child, the fire god, Kagutsuchi, who is glowing with the innocence of a newborn, unaware that his birth was a murder. Rage takes hold of Izanagi, a cold, divine fury. He draws his sword, the 10-fist sword, the Totsuka no Tsurugi. He stands over his son. The child of fire looks up. Izanagi does not hesitate. He swings the blade. He decapitates his own son. The blood of the fire god sprays across the hall. It splashes onto the rocks. It splashes onto the trees. And because this is the age of gods, the blood does not just dry. It lives. From the blood on the tip of the sword, the gods of rocks and thunder are born. From the blood on the hilt, the gods of dragons and rain are born. The death of fire creates the forces that will shape the warrior culture of Japan: iron, stone, and blood sacrifice. The body of Kagutsuchi is cut into 8 pieces, and these pieces become 8 volcanic mountains. But killing the cause of his pain does not cure the pain itself. Izanagi is alone. The grief is a physical weight, pressing on his chest, making it hard to breathe. He decides he cannot leave her in the dark. He will do the forbidden. He will break the natural law that was just established. He will go to the land of the dead to bring her back. He travels to the Yomotsu Hirasaka, the even pass of Yomi. This is not a fiery hell like the Christian inferno. It is a damp, dark, subterranean realm. It is the land of Yomi, which implies darkness, night, and the yellow springs of the earth. The entrance is located in the province of Izumo, a place of shadows and ancient mists. Izanagi finds the cave mouth. The air that flows out of it is cold and smells of stagnant water and old earth. It smells of rot. He steps inside. The descent is long. The light of the sun, which has not yet been born as a deity, but exists as a concept, fades behind him. He walks down the slope, his footsteps echoing in the vast caverns of the underworld. The rock walls are slick with moisture. He is walking into the womb of the earth, but it is a dead womb. He is walking backward through time, trying to undo the burning. He reaches the gates of a great palace. Even in death, Izanami dwells in a hall. Izanagi stands at the gate. He does not dare to open it yet. He calls out to her. His voice trembles in the dark. "Oh, my lovely younger sister, the lands that you and I were making are not yet finished. Come back." Silence answers him for a long time. Then, from behind the heavy doors, a voice speaks. It is her voice, but it is different. It is lower. It has a hollow quality, like wind blowing across the mouth of a jar. "It is lamentable that you did not come sooner," she says. "I have eaten the food of Yomi." In Japanese mythology, eating the food of a realm binds you to it. Just as Persephone ate the pomegranate seeds in Greek myth, Izanami has partaken of the cooking of the dead. She belongs to the dark now. Her substance has changed. "But," she continues, "because you, my lovely elder brother, have come all this way, I wish to return. I will discuss it with the gods of Yomi. But you must promise me one thing." "Anything," Izanagi says. "Do not look at me," she commands. "Wait here. Do not open the door. Do not try to see me until I am ready." Izanagi agrees. He sits down before the gate of the underworld. He waits. Time in the underworld is deceptive. It stretches and warps. He waits for what feels like hours, then days, then years. The darkness presses against his eyes. The silence begins to gnaw at his mind. He hears faint sounds from within the palace, shuffling, dripping, low groans. Doubt begins to creep into his heart. Why is she taking so long? What are they discussing? Is she truly there, or is this a trick of the shadows? The impatience of the living is a powerful force. Izanagi, the creator who shaped islands and rivers, cannot master the simple art of waiting. He needs to see. He needs to know. He reaches into his hair. He takes out the holy comb that holds his long hair in place. It is made of bamboo. He snaps off one of the large end teeth of the comb. He holds it up in the darkness. He summons his power. He lights the tooth on fire. It flares up like a torch, a small, flickering sphere of orange light in the absolute blackness of Yomi. Izanagi stands up. He pushes the gate open. He steps into the hall. He holds the torch high, desperate to see the face of his beloved wife, expecting to see the beautiful goddess who walked the pillar with him on the island of Onogoro. He looks, and the scream that tears from his throat is the sound that births the fear of ghosts in the Japanese soul. What he sees is not his wife. It is a landscape of horror. Izanami is rotting. Her divine flesh, once smooth and radiant, is purple and swollen. It is sloughing off the bone in wet sheets. Maggots are squirming in her skin, but they are not ordinary maggots. They are hissing. They are churning. The sound of her decomposition is like the sound of 1,000 insects chewing on dry leaves. She is lying there, a heap of putrefaction. But she is not dead in the way mortals are dead. She is animated by the energy of the grave. She looks at him, and this is where the thunder begins. Izanagi looks closer, paralyzed by the grotesque sight. He sees that her body is not just rotting, it is inhabited. Beings have taken residence in her corpse. They are born from the pollution of her death. They are the avatars of the noise and the violence of the storm, incubated in the dead flesh of the Earth Mother. These are not the Raijin we see in statues today, beating drums with joy. These are the Yakuza no Ikazuchi, the 8 thunder deities. Izanagi sees them writhing in her body. On her head, clinging to the skull, is O Ikazuchi, the great thunder. It pulses with a deep, crushing pressure. On her breast, where the heart should be, sits Ono Ikazuchi, the fire thunder. It glows with the heat of the lightning strike that burns trees. In her belly, distended and dark, coils Kuro Ikazuchi, the black thunder, the thunder that darkens the sky at noon. On her genitals, the source of life now turned to a source of horror, sits Saku Ikazuchi, the cleaving thunder, the sharp crack that splits rocks and reality. In her left hand, she holds Waka Ikazuchi, the young thunder. In her right hand, Tsuchi Ikazuchi, the earth thunder. On her left foot, Naru Ikazuchi, the rumbling thunder. On her right foot, Fusu Ikazuchi, the couchant thunder. 8 distinct deities. 8 aspects of the storm. They are roaring. They are crackling with static energy. The hall of the dead is illuminated not by the torch, but by the electrical arcs jumping between the rotting limbs of the goddess. Izanagi realizes that he is not looking at his wife anymore. He is looking at a generator of monsters. Izanami sees him looking. She sees the horror in his eyes. She sees the torch. Her shame transforms instantly into a demonic rage. "You!" she hisses, her voice bubbling through the fluids of her decay. "You have shamed me!" The pact is broken. The love is dead. There is only the hunt. Izanagi turns and runs. He drops the torch. He runs for the entrance, his heart pounding against his ribs like a war drum. He scrambles up the wet slope of the Yomotsu Hirasaka. But he is not alone. "Catch him!" Izanami screams. She does not run herself, not yet. She sends the hags of Yomi, the Yomotsu Shikome, ugly, screeching female spirits that haunt the dark tunnels. They scramble after him on all fours, their claws clicking on the stone, faster than any wolf. Izanagi hears them coming. He hears the panting, the shrieking. He reaches into his headdress again. He takes the vine that binds his hair. He throws it behind him. Instantly, it transforms into wild grapes. The hags, driven by a gluttonous hunger, stop to devour the grapes. Izanagi gains a few yards. He runs on, but they finish the fruit and resume the chase. He takes the bamboo comb from his hair, the rest of it. He throws it down. It transforms into bamboo shoots. The hags stop again, tearing at the shoots with their teeth, eating voraciously. Izanagi reaches the upper slopes. He can see the faint gray light of the living world ahead, but the ground behind him begins to shake. A deeper, louder rumble fills the cavern. It is not the hags this time. Izanami has unleashed the artillery. She sends the 8 thunder deities. They detach themselves from her rotting body. They rise into the air, balls of lightning and sound. They fly through the tunnels, illuminating the wet rocks with stroboscopic flashes of blue and white light. They are faster than the hags. They are pure energy. They are the first manifestation of Raijin in the world, and they are hunting their father to drag him back into the dark. Izanagi is exhausted. He draws his sword, flailing it behind him, trying to cut the air, trying to ward off the lightning. But how do you cut thunder? He reaches the mouth of the cave. He bursts out into the twilight of the living world. The fresh air hits his face, but the thunders are right behind him, crackling at his heels. There, at the base of the slope, stands a tree, a peach tree, loaded with fruit. In ancient Taoist and Japanese belief, the peach is a sacred fruit. It is filled with life energy, the direct opposite of the rot of Yomi. It is a talisman against evil. Izanagi desperately plucks 3 peaches. He turns to the dark tunnel mouth. He throws the fruit. He does not throw them as food, but as grenades of life force. The peaches strike the pursuing thunders. The purity of the fruit, the aggressive vitality of the living world, repels the forces of death. The 8 thunders recoil. They cannot cross the barrier of the peaches. They hiss and crackle, defeated by the simple, fuzzy fruit. They retreat back into the shadows. Izanagi is safe. He collapses, panting. He looks at the peaches. "Just as you have helped me," he says to the fruit, "so must you help all people in the central land of Reed Plains when they fall into trouble." But the nightmare is not over. Izanami herself arrives at the boundary. She cannot cross, but she can speak. Her voice is now the voice of the grave itself. "My lovely elder brother," she screams from the dark. "If you do this, if you divorce me and leave me here, I will strangle 1,000 of your people every single day." Izanagi stands up. He looks into the dark one last time. He wipes the sweat and the grime of the underworld from his face. He accepts the new reality. "My lovely younger sister," he replies, his voice steady with the weight of kingship. "If you do that, I will build 1,500 birthing huts every single day." And so the balance was set. Death would take 1,000, but life would bring 1,500. The population would grow. The cycle was established. Izanagi rolled a massive boulder, the Chibiki no Iwa, across the mouth of the cave. He sealed the entrance to Yomi forever. On one side stood the living husband, bathed in the light of the upper world. On the other side stood the rotting wife, surrounded by the 8 thunders in the eternal dark. They exchanged their final names. She became the great deity of Yomi. He became the great deity of the turning earth. He turned away. He needed to wash. He was covered in the filth of death, the Kagare. He traveled to the river mouth at Tachibana in Himuka. He stepped into the water to perform the misoji, the ritual purification. He washed his left eye, and Amaterasu, the sun goddess, was born. He washed his right eye, and Tsukuyomi, the moon god, was born. He washed his nose, and Susanoo, the storm god, was born. But what of the thunders? What of the Yakuza no Ikazuchi? They remained in the dark. They were the first prototypes of the storm. Born of rot, born of fear, born of the mother's rage. They were not yet the guardians of the temple. They were the monsters in the basement of the world. But the energy they represented, that raw, crackling, terrifying power, could not be contained in the underworld forever. It would eventually find a way to rise. It would merge with the wind. It would find a new form, a form that could be worshipped, feared, and eventually understood. The womb of fire and shadow had done its work. The seeds of the storm had been planted. Now we must watch them grow. We must see how the 8 thunders evolved from the maggots of a corpse into the red-skinned giant who beats the drums of the sky. We must leave the age of the gods and step forward into the age where these myths began to take a shape that we can recognize. We must look at how the Japanese people, living in a land of typhoons and earthquakes, took this primal horror and turned it into an icon. For now, let the boulder sit across the mouth of the cave. Let the peaches ripen on the tree, and listen to the distant rumble in the ground. It is not an earthquake. It is the sound of the 8 thunders, waiting for their time to ascend. The heavy stone door of the Chibiki no Iwa sits motionless. The moss has grown over it. The vines have curled around its base. For eons, it has sealed the boundary between the sunlit world of the living and the rotting dampness of the dead. But sound is difficult to bury. Vibration travels through rock. It travels through the roots of the cedar trees. It travels through the soles of the feet. And deep within the earth, beneath the seal placed by the creator god Izanagi, the storm is not sleeping. It is raging. We left the 8 thunder deities, the Yakuza no Ikazuchi, swirling in the darkness of Yomi. They were born of putrefaction, born of the corpse of the mother, Izanami. They are the primal ancestors of the god we call Raijin. But before we can understand the red-skinned, drum-beating figure that guards the temples of Kyoto today, we must understand what these 8 entities truly represent. We must dissect the anatomy of the ancient Japanese storm. To the early inhabitants of the Japanese archipelago, the Jomon and Yayoi peoples, the storm was not merely a meteorological event. It was not just high pressure meeting low pressure. It was the voice of the earth screaming in pain. Living on the ring of fire, the ancient Japanese understood that the ground beneath them was volatile. It breathed fire. It shook. It cracked open. And the storm in the sky was seen as a reflection, or perhaps a continuation, of this subterranean violence. Let us look closely at the 8 thunders that Izanagi fled from. The Kojiki names them with specific intent. They are not random appellations. They are a taxonomy of terror. They map the physical experience of a natural disaster. First, there was O Ikazuchi, the Great Thunder. This is the alpha sound, the sonic boom that occurs directly overhead, the kind that rattles the ribs and leaves a ringing silence in the ears. It sits on the head of the corpse mother because it is the crowning terror. It represents the overwhelming authority of the storm, the sheer volume that commands immediate submission. When the sky turns black and that first massive crack splits the air, that is O Ikazuchi asserting his dominance. He is the general of the atmospheric army. Then, sitting on the breast, was Ono Ikazuchi, the fire thunder. This is a crucial distinction. In many mythologies, thunder and lightning are one. But here, the fire thunder specifically links the bolt to its incendiary capacity. In a civilization built of wood and paper, fire was the ultimate destroyer. A single strike of Hono Ikazuchi could turn a village into ash in moments. But there is a deeper layer here. Remember where he was born, in the underworld, from a mother burned by a fire god. Hono Ikazuchi is not just the lightning that strikes the tree. He is the volcanic lightning. He is the static charge generated within the plume of an erupting mountain. He links the fire of the sky with the fire of the earth. Coiled in the belly was Kuro Ikazuchi, the black thunder. This is the atmospheric darkening, the strange, bruised twilight that descends at noon when a typhoon approaches. It is the heavy, suffocating gloom that the Kojiki speaks of. It is the thunder that you cannot see, the rumble hidden within the thickest, darkest clouds. It represents the unknown, the hidden threat, the monster in the dark. It is the anxiety of the storm, the feeling of dread before the rain falls. And on the genitals, the source of creation now turned to rot, sat Saku Ikazuchi, the cleaving thunder. The word saku implies splitting, tearing, or blossoming violently. This is the sharp, high-pitched crack of the lightning that splits a boulder or shatters a tree trunk. It is the piercing thunder. It represents the violence that penetrates. Just as the birth of the fire god tore Izanami apart, the cleaving thunder tears the world apart. It is the sound of separation. In the left hand was Waka Ikazuchi, the young thunder. Why young? Perhaps it represents the early, distant rumbles that herald the coming storm, the warning shots. Or perhaps it represents the rejuvenating aspect of the rain, the energy that wakes the seeds in the spring. Even in the underworld, there is a twisted form of youth, a chaotic energy that refuses to be still. In the right hand was Tsuchi Ikazuchi, the earth thunder. This is the most profound connection to the geological reality of Japan. Tsuchi means earth. This is the thunder that is felt rather than heard. It is the deep, subsonic vibration of the earthquake. In ancient Japan, the line between an earthquake, Nai, and a thunderstorm, Rai, was blurred. Both were shakings of the world. Tsuchi Ikazuchi is the realization that the sky and the ground are connected. When the heavens roar, the earth trembles in sympathy. On the left foot was Naru Ikazuchi, the rumbling thunder. This is the rolling, continuous growl that echoes through the valleys. It is the thunder that bounces off the mountains, surrounding the listener, making it impossible to tell where the sound is coming from. It is the omnipresent voice of the storm. And finally, on the right foot, was Fusu Ikazuchi, the couchant thunder. Fusu implies lying down, hiding, or waiting in ambush. This is the latent thunder, the potential energy, the charged silence between the flash and the boom. It is the predator crouching in the grass, waiting to spring. It represents the tension of the atmosphere. These 8 thunders, born of the dead mother, form a complete psychological profile of a natural disaster. They are not benevolent. They do not bring rain for the harvest, not yet. In the Kojiki, they are monsters. They are the agents of Izanami's rage. They are the soldiers of death. When they chased Izanagi to the entrance of Yomi, they were trying to drag the principle of life back into the darkness. They were repelled by the peaches, the fruit of life, but they were not destroyed. You cannot destroy thunder. You can only survive it. So, Izanagi sealed the cave, but he could not seal the sky. The influence of the 8 thunders leaked out. They became the Arimitama, the rough spirits of the atmosphere. For centuries, before Buddhism brought statues and anthropomorphism to Japan, the thunder god was invisible. He had no face. He had no drums. He was simply the Narukami, the rumbling god. The ancient Japanese did not build temples to the thunder in the way they built shrines for the sun or the sea. They built shrines to appease the thunder. The worship was apotropaic, intended to turn away harm. When the sky turned black and the 8 thunders began to speak, the people did not pray for blessings. They hid. They covered their ears. They chanted words of warding. This era of the invisible terror is crucial for understanding the soul of Raijin. He was a mononoke, a changing thing, a spirit of uncertain form. He might manifest as a sudden wind. He might manifest as a child. He might manifest as a snake. This snake connection is vital. In the oldest strata of Japanese folklore, the thunder is often depicted as a serpent or a dragon. Why? Because the lightning bolt moves like a snake. It zigzags. It strikes with venomous speed. And the dragon is the master of water. The storm brings rain. Therefore, the thunder god must be a dragon god. We see this in the ancient shrines of the Kamo clan, where the thunder deity is worshipped as a great serpent who descends from the mountains to fertilize the fields. But wait. Fertilize? Here lies the great paradox of Raijin, the duality that transforms him from a monster of Yomi into a guardian of the nation. The storm destroys, yes. The 8 thunders are terrifying. But without the storm, there is no water. And without water, there is no rice. Japan is a civilization built on wet rice agriculture. The cultivation of rice requires immense amounts of water. The monsoon season, the tsuyu, is the lifeblood of the harvest, and the monsoon brings lightning. The farmers, watching the sky from their paddies, noticed a correlation. The fields that were struck by lightning, or the fields where the thunderstorms were most violent, often produced the best yields. The nitrogen-fixing properties of lightning, which we know today as science, were understood by the ancients as divine copulation. They believed that the lightning bolt was not trying to kill the rice. It was trying to impregnate it. This gave rise to one of the most beautiful and essential words in the Japanese language, Inazuma. Ina comes from ine, meaning rice plant. Zuma comes from suma, meaning spouse or husband/wife. Lightning is the rice spouse. The flash in the sky is the moment of conception. The thunder god, descending from the heavens or rising from the earth, mates with the rice plants, gifting them the energy to grow tall and full. The terror of the 8 thunders is thus transformed into the passion of a lover. The destructive fire becomes the generative spark. This realization changed everything. The deity was still dangerous. One does not approach a lover in the throes of passion without risk. But he was now essential. He was a partner in survival. But the 8 thunders were still faceless forces. They needed a form. They needed a personality. And the Japanese pantheon, ever expanding, provided a vessel for this chaotic energy. Enter Susanoo no Mikoto. When Izanagi washed the filth of the underworld from his nose during the purification ritual, he blew out a god. This was Susanoo, the swift, impetuous male, the brother of the sun goddess Amaterasu. Susanoo is often called the storm god, and this creates confusion. Is Susanoo Raijin? Are they the same? Not quite. Susanoo is the lord of the storm. He is the personality of the tempest, the wild, unpredictable, emotional tantrums of the weather. He is the wind that tears down the rice paddies. He is the hurricane that smashes the house. He is the god who shits in his sister's temple and flays a pony backward just to get a reaction. He is the archetype of the trickster hero, the unruly teenager of the cosmos. But Raijin is the mechanic of the storm. Raijin is the sound. Raijin is the voltage. While Susanoo wields the storm as a weapon or a mood, Raijin is the thunder. However, in the early mythology, these lines were blurred. Susanoo commanded the lightning. He was the one who slew the 8-headed dragon, Yamata no Orochi, another link to the serpent/storm imagery. He carried the sword derived from the dragon's tail. He was the raw, masculine force of nature. For a long time, the worship of the storm was centered on Susanoo. He was the face of the wind and rain. The 8 thunders of Yomi were relegated to the background, the nameless batteries that powered Susanoo's rage. But a culture as visual as Japan's could not leave the thunder faceless forever. The abstract dread of the rice spouse needed a body. The farmers needed someone to look at. They needed an image to paint on their scrolls and carve into their statues. And then, ships began to arrive from the continent, from China, from Korea, and with them they brought a new way of seeing the divine. They brought the Silk Road. They brought Buddhism. In the 6th century A.D., the visual landscape of Japan underwent a revolution. The simple, nature-based spirits of Shinto, who were felt but rarely seen, met the elaborate, colorful, anthropomorphic pantheon of Mahayana Buddhism. The Buddhists had a talent for absorbing local gods. They did not destroy the kami. They gave them new jobs. They took the terrifying spirits of the land and recruited them as guardians of the Dharma. And among the Buddhist texts, there were descriptions of sky deities. There were descriptions of devas. Specifically, there were memories of an ancient Hindu god named Indra. Indra was the king of the gods in the Vedic tradition. He was the wielder of the Vajra, the thunderbolt. He rode a white elephant. He was a warrior. As Buddhism traveled from India to China, Indra was transformed. He became Taishakutan, but the concept of the thunder-wielding warrior traveled with him. Even more influential were the yakshas and rakshasas, the nature spirits and demons of Indian myth. These were fierce, muscular, terrifying beings who guarded the treasures of the earth. When Chinese artists painted them, they gave them bulging eyes, fangs, and wild hair. They gave them the bodies of bodybuilders and the faces of nightmares. The Japanese artists looked at these foreign demons. Then they looked at their own invisible, terrifying 8 thunders, and they made a match. They realized that the best way to depict the raw power of the storm was not as a serene nobleman, but as a demon, an oni. The oni is the Japanese ogre, red or blue skin, horns, tiger skin loincloth, iron club. They are the boogeymen of Japanese folklore. They represent the wild, untamed forces of nature that exist outside of civilized society. The artists took the Oni archetype and elevated it. They stripped away the iron club and replaced it with something else, something rhythmic, something that mimicked the sound of the Naru Ikazuchi, the rumbling thunder. They gave him drums. This was the stroke of genius that defined Raijin forever. The thunder was not a hammer strike, like Thor. It was not a chariot, like Zeus. It was a drum beat. It was the taiko. The drum is the instrument of the heartbeat. It is the sound of blood pumping. It is the sound of war. By giving the thunder god a ring of drums floating behind his head, the artists visualized the rhythm of the storm. Thunder does not strike once. It rolls. Boom, 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 rumble. It is a percussion solo, played by the heavens. And so, the 8 thunders of Yomi were fused into a single body. The great thunder became his muscular chest. The fire thunder became his red skin, the color of anger, vitality, and blood. The black thunder became his wild, wind-tossed hair, black as the storm clouds. The cleaving thunder became the drumsticks, the beaters that strike the sound. The young thunder became his energy, his dynamic pose, always caught in mid-leap. The earth thunder became his feet, which, in statues, often trample on jagged rocks or demons of the earth. Raijin was born. He was no longer just the rice spouse or the rumbling god. He was now Kaminari-sama, the Honorable Mr. Thunder, a figure you could look in the eye, a figure who looked terrifying, yes, with his fangs and his horns, but whose terror was contained within a human-like form. He was often paired with another deity, Fujin, the god of wind. Together, they became the Raijin-Fujin dyad, the dynamic duo of the sky. Fujin with his bag of air, Raijin with his ring of drums. They were placed at the gates of temples, the Neomon gates. Why put demons at the gate of a holy temple? Because only a monster can scare away other monsters. If you want to protect the Buddha, you don't hire a poet. You hire the storm. Raijin became the ultimate bouncer. He stood there, red and raging, beating his drums, daring any evil spirit to cross the threshold. He became a symbol of strength employed for protection. The chaotic energy of Yomi, which once chased Izanagi to kill him, was now harnessed to guard the sacred precincts of the Dharma. But the transformation was not seamless. The folk beliefs did not disappear just because the statues were built. The people still feared the lightning. They still remembered the hissing maggots of the underworld deep in their cultural memory. And this fear manifested in strange superstitions. Superstitions that are told to children in Japan even today. "Cover your belly button," the grandmothers say when the thunder rolls. "Hide your navel, or Raijin will come and eat it." Why the navel? Why does the thunder god want your belly button? Is it a whimsical joke, or is it a distant echo of the birth trauma? Remember Izanami. Remember the fire god born from her womb. Remember the thunder born from her belly, Kuro Ikazuchi. The navel is the scar of our connection to the mother. It is the center of the body. In East Asian medicine, it is the center of chi, of life energy. Perhaps Raijin, the god born of death, craves the center of life. Perhaps he is always trying to reconnect the cord that was severed in the underworld. Or perhaps it is simply a practical warning. When the storm comes, the temperature drops. If you expose your belly, you catch a cold. The thunder brings the chill. Whatever the reason, the image of the red demon hunting for navels became a staple of Japanese childhood. It made Raijin intimate. He wasn't a distant god on a mountain. He was the monster who might come into your bedroom if you weren't careful. He was scary, but he was family. As the Heian period progressed, the court nobles in Kyoto began to refine their culture. They wrote poetry. They wore silk. They built wooden palaces that were masterpieces of architecture, but tinderboxes for fire. They feared Hono Ikazuchi above all else. And their fear was about to be justified, because the Thunder God was not done evolving. He was about to merge with a human soul. He was about to descend from the clouds and enter the political arena. He was about to become an instrument of vengeance for a wronged scholar. The story of the 8 thunders is a story of nature, but the story of Tenjin, the heavenly deity, is a story of history. It is the story of how a man named Sugawara no Michizane died in exile, and how his rage became so great that he hijacked the lightning and turned it against the emperor himself. This is the moment where myth meets record, where the supernatural crashes into the imperial court. We are moving from the primal caves of Yomi to the polished floors of the Siryoden Palace. The drums are beating louder now. Can you hear them? They are no longer just the sound of nature. They are the sound of justice. Prepare yourself. The sky over Kyoto is turning black. The scholar is dead, and the thunder is waiting for his command. We embark now on the tale of the vengeful spirit, the wrath of Tenjin. A storm has a sound, as we have established, the roaring voice of the 8 thunders. But what does the storm look like? For centuries, in the early history of Japan, this question had no answer. The gods, the kami, were invisible. They were felt in the wind, heard in the thunder, sensed in the spine-tingling aura of the ancient cedar groves. To try and capture them in wood or stone was seen as futile, perhaps even disrespectful. Izanagi did not see a statue in the underworld. He saw a rotting corpse infested with lightning. The horror of the divine lay in its lack of definition. It was a shapeless, writhing energy that defied the clean lines of human art. But the human mind craves a face. We cannot pray to a vibration. We cannot build a house for a noise. We need eyes to look into. We need hands to hold the offerings. And so, as the Yamato state began to coalesce, as the courts of Asuka and Nara began to rise, a great transformation occurred. The invisible terror of the storm was about to be given a body. This body did not come from the soil of Japan alone. It arrived on a ship. It traveled thousands of miles, carried in the minds of monks, in the scrolls of sutras, and in the bronze of foreign idols. It came from the West, not the Europe of the future, but the ancient, mystical west of India and China. The Silk Road did not just trade spices and silk, it traded gods. To understand the face of Raijin, the red face, the bulging eyes, the fangs, we must look back to the Vedas of ancient India. We must look to Indra. Indra was the king of the Devas. He was the lord of Svarga, the heavens, and his weapon was the Vajra, the thunderbolt. In the sweltering heat of the Indian subcontinent, the monsoon was the bringer of life, and Indra was the warrior who cracked the clouds open to release the rains. He was depicted as powerful, violent, and regal. As Buddhism traveled east, it absorbed Indra. He was not rejected, he was converted. He became a protector of the Buddha. He traveled over the Himalayas into the vast expanse of China. There, he was reimagined by artists who had their own traditions of thunder gods, deities like Lei Gong, the Duke of Thunder, who was often depicted as a birdman with claws and a beak, striking a chisel with a hammer. The image shifted and morphed like clouds in a gale. The bird features softened. The warrior aspect hardened. By the time this deity crossed the sea to Japan in the 6th and 7th centuries, he was known as Taishakutan. But Taishakutan was too noble, too human, too refined to represent the raw, screaming madness of a Japanese typhoon. The Japanese people looked at the elegant statues of the Buddha, serene, golden, motionless. And they looked at their sky, which was tearing itself apart with violet lightning. They knew that the golden Buddha was the destination, but the storm was the journey. They needed a god who looked like the storm. They needed a monster. And so, the Japanese artisans performed a great act of syncretism. They took the foreign concept of the Thunder King, and they merged it with their own indigenous nightmares. They merged it with the Oni, the ogre, the demon. In the folklore of the mountains, the Oni were the anti-humans. They were the wild men. They had horns growing from their skulls, signifying their beastly nature. They wore loincloths made of tiger skin, signifying their prowess as hunters. They were muscular, hairy, and violent. They were the perfect vessel for the Arimitama, the rough spirit of the thunder. Look closely at a statue of Raijin today. You are seeing a ghost of the Silk Road wrapped in the skin of a Japanese demon. He has the horns of the Oni. He has the fangs of the Yaksha, the Indian nature spirit. He has the wild, blowing scarf, Tene, of the Chinese celestial beings. And he has the Vajra. But the Vajra has changed. In the hands of the Buddhist priests, the thunderbolt weapon of Indra became a ritual object, the Tokosho, or Vajra Pestla. It became a symbol of the diamond-hard wisdom that cuts through illusion. But for the god of the storm, a small brass handle was not enough. He needed something louder. He needed an instrument that could explain the rumble. And this is where the drums appear. The visual innovation of the ring of drums is perhaps the most defining characteristic of the Japanese thunder god. In Chinese art, Lei Gong sometimes held a hammer and chisel, but the Japanese artists, obsessed with the rhythm of nature, gave Raijin the taiko. Imagine the sound of a taiko drum, don, don, do don. It is physical. It hits you in the chest. It resonates in the cavity of the lungs. It is the closest earthly sound to the boom of thunder. The artists drew a great wheel, floating behind the god's head like a halo. But instead of light, this halo was made of 8 drums, a subtle nod, perhaps, to the 8 thunders of Yomi. Raijin does not strike these drums with a complex technique. He is not a musician. He is a force. He holds 2 large beaters, shaped like dumbbells or bones. His pose is always dynamic. He is never sitting still. He is always caught in mid-leap, twisting his torso, his arm raised high, about to bring the hammer down on the skin of the drum. This pose is the iconography of action. The Buddha sits in meditation because he has reached the end of the path. Raijin dances because the storm is a process. It is movement. The storm cannot stop, or it ceases to be a storm. But let us look closer at the drums themselves. Painted on the skin of each drum is a symbol, a black swirl, a comma shape. This is the tomoe. If you walk through the streets of modern Tokyo or visit a souvenir shop in Kyoto, you will see this symbol everywhere. It is on the tiles of rooftops. It is on the banners of festivals. It is on the hilts of samurai swords. It is the triple comma swirl, the Mitsudomoe. What is it? And why does it belong to the thunder god? The etymology of tomoe is debated. Some say it relates to tomome, the wrist guard used by archers, which had a circular shape. Others say it represents a whirlpool, the churning of water. But in the context of Raijin, it is almost certainly a stylized magatama. The magatama are the ancient curved beads found in the burial mounds of the Kofun period. They are shaped like a fetus, or a tooth, or a soul. They are one of the 3 sacred treasures of the imperial house. They represent the soul, or the spirit, contained within a stone. When 3 of them are arranged in a circle, chasing each other's tails, they create a sense of infinite motion. The Mitsudomoe is the visual representation of the cycle. It is the water turning into vapor, the vapor turning into clouds, the clouds turning into rain, the rain turning into water. It is the visual engine of the storm. When Raijin beats the drums, he is not just making noise. He is spinning the wheel of the elements. He is activating the tomoe. He is churning the atmosphere, just as his father Izanagi churned the ocean. And notice the colors. Raijin is almost always red. Why red? In the West, red is the color of the devil, but in the East, red is the color of life. It is the color of blood. It is the color of the sun. It is the color of yang energy. Red is supposed to repel evil spirits. It is a protective color. Small pox deities were frightened away by the color red. By painting the thunder god red, the artists were identifying him as a being of overflowing vitality. He is not evil. He is simply too much life. He is an explosion of energy. He is the fever that burns away the infection. This brings us to his partner, his shadow, his eternal brother. Fujin, the wind god. You rarely see Raijin alone in art. He is one half of a whole. Fujin is the green, or blue, demon. While Raijin has his drums, Fujin holds a large bag, a wind bag, slung over his shoulders. He grips the mouth of the bag, letting out just enough air to create a breeze, or opening it wide to unleash a typhoon. Fujin is the silent mover. Raijin is the loud shaker. Fujin is the horizontal force, the wind blowing across the land. Raijin is the vertical force, the lightning striking down. Together, they form the grid of the storm. Their pairing is a masterpiece of balance, red and green, sound and silence, or rather the whistle of wind versus the crack of thunder, drums and bag. They are the ultimate odd couple of the pantheon. They bicker, they fight. In folklore, they are often depicted as rivals competing to see who is stronger. "I will blow the roof off," says Fujin. "I will burn the pillar down," says Raijin. But in their competition, the world is watered, the seeds are scattered, and the harvest is secured. The most famous depiction of this pair, the image that is burned into the collective retina of Japan, is found in the Sanjusangando Temple in Kyoto, the Hall of 33 Bays. Imagine walking into this hall. It is a long, narrow wooden building, smelling of centuries-old incense and dust. In the center sits the massive statue of Kannon, the goddess of mercy. And flanking her are 1,000 smaller statues of Kannon, row upon row of golden arms and serene faces. It is an army of compassion. But standing guard at the very ends of the hall, like bookends to the silence, are Raijin and Fujin. These statues, carved in the Kamakura period, likely by the school of the master sculptor Tankei, are national treasures, and they are terrifying. They are about human-sized, but they feel gigantic. They stand on top of clouds, swirling masses of sculpted wood that look like billowing smoke. Raijin is naked from the waist up, his ribs showing through his skin, his muscles taut like steel cables. His face is contorted in a scream of exertion. His eyes are crystals, inserted into the wood to catch the light, making them gleam with a realistic, wet intelligence. This is not the rotting horror of Yomi anymore. This is a sentinel. This is the key evolution. In the beginning, the thunder was something you ran from. It was a predator. But with the arrival of the temple, the thunder became something you used. It became a guardian. The logic is simple. If you have something precious, like a temple, a sutra, or a city, you need a dog to guard it. And you don't want a poodle. You want a wolf. The monks took the wolf of the storm and put a collar on him. They placed him at the Neomon, the Diva Gate. They said to the demons of the outside world, "Do not come in here. We have the thunder on our payroll." This concept, using a demon to fight demons, is central to Japanese magic. It is the concept of Goryo, vengeful spirits. It meant that Raijin could be both scary and good. He is a wrathful deity. His anger is not directed at the innocent. It is directed at the enemies of the Dharma. He screams so that we can pray in silence. He strikes the drum so that the heartbeat of the universe continues. But the transformation into an icon brought with it a strange side effect: humanization. Once you give a god a human-like body, even a demonic one, people start to treat him like a person. They start to tell stories about his mistakes. They start to make fun of him. In the Otsui folk paintings of the Edo period, centuries later, we see a very different Raijin. We see him dropping his drum in the ocean and trying to fish it out. We see him falling from a cloud because he was looking at a pretty girl. We see him losing a game of dice to a human. The thunder in the belly of the corpse became the clumsy ogre on the cloud. The horror faded. The familiarity grew. But we must not move too fast. We are still in the era of awe. The statues of Sanjusangando are not funny. They are awe-inspiring. They capture the moment when the Japanese people looked the typhoon in the eye and said, "We will carve you, we will paint you, we will name you, and by naming you, we will survive you." The evolution of Raijin's iconography is the story of Japan taming its own geography. They could not stop the volcanoes. They could not stop the typhoons. So they turned them into art. They took the chaotic scribbles of the lightning bolt and turned them into the elegant curves of the tomoi. And yet, there was one element missing. We have the nature spirit. We have the visual icon. But we do not yet have the human soul. The thunder god was still a generic deity. He was a Raijin, not the specific historical vengeance. For the storm to become truly political, for it to shake the foundations of the imperial palace, it needed a catalyst. It needed a man with a grievance so deep that only the sky was big enough to hold it. It needed a poet. In the late 9th century, a scholar named Sugawara no Michizane was writing poems in Kyoto. He was brilliant. He was favored by the emperor, and he was hated by the rival clans. He did not know it yet, but he was destined to become the human heart of the thunder god. He was destined to merge with the red-skinned demon and bring the lightning down onto the heads of his enemies. The statues at the temple gate stand still, but the man in the palace is pacing. The clouds are gathering over Mount Hiei. The evolution of the image is complete. Now, the evolution of the legend must begin. We leave the sculptor's workshop now. We leave the smell of sawdust and lacquer. We enter the court of Heian-kyo, the capital of peace and tranquility. But there is no peace here. There is only whispering, betrayal, and a plot that will birth the most famous lightning strike in history. The drums are waiting, and this time they will be played by a ghost. The tragedy of Tenjin awaits. The woodblock prints are dry. The statues are carved. But a god is not made of wood or ink alone. A god requires a soul, and sometimes that soul is forged in the fires of human tragedy. We have spoken of the primal birth of the thunder in the rotting caverns of the underworld. We have spoken of the artistic birth of Raijin in the workshops of the Buddhist sculptors. But now, we must speak of his historical birth. We must leave the misty age of the gods and enter the recorded time of men. We must travel to the late 9th century, to the capital of Heian-kyo, the city we now call Kyoto. It was an era of supreme elegance. The aristocrats blackened their teeth, powdered their faces white, and communicated almost entirely through 31-syllable poems called waka. The air was perfumed with incense. The rustle of silk robes was louder than the clash of swords. But beneath this veneer of extreme refinement lay a political brutality as sharp as any katana. In the year 845, a boy was born into the Sugawara clan. His name was Michizane. He was not a warrior. He was a scholar. He was a prodigy of Chinese literature and poetry. In a court dominated by the powerful Fujiwara clan, who married their daughters to emperors to control the throne, Michizane rose through the ranks by sheer intellectual brilliance. He became the minister of the right. He was the trusted advisor of Emperor Uda. He was the most brilliant mind of his generation. But in the Heian court, brilliance is dangerous. It breeds envy. When Emperor Uda abdicated and the young Emperor Daigo took the throne, the Fujiwara clan saw their chance. They whispered poison into the young emperor's ear. They claimed that Michizane, the loyal scholar, was plotting treason. They claimed he intended to depose the emperor. It was a lie, a fabrication born of jealousy. But in the whisper network of the court, the truth is irrelevant. The lie took root. In the year 901, the decree was issued. Sugawara no Michizane was stripped of his titles. He was stripped of his rank. he was banished from the glittering capital of Kyoto. His destination was Dazaifu, on the southern island of Kyushu. Technically, he was given a post there, but everyone knew the truth. It was a death sentence. Dazaifu was the end of the world. It was a place of exile, far from the culture and the emperor he loved. Imagine the heartbreak. Michizane leaves his beloved plum trees in his garden in Kyoto. He speaks a famous poem to them. "When the east wind blows, let it send your fragrance to me. O blossoms of the plum, do not forget the spring, even though your master is lost." He travels south. He arrives in Dazaifu. He lives in a dilapidated hut. He has no servants. He has no silk. He wears rough clothes. He listens to the wind rattling the thin walls of his shack. He spends his days gazing toward the northeast, toward Kyoto, writing poems of agonizing sorrow. He asserts his innocence to the moon, but the court does not answer. 2 years later, in 903, he dies. He dies of a broken heart. He dies of malnutrition and despair. He is buried in a simple grave. The ox pulling his hearse stops suddenly and refuses to move, and so he is buried where the ox stopped, a sign, perhaps, of his stubborn spirit. The court in Kyoto breathes a sigh of relief. The rival is gone. The Fujiwara clan celebrates. They think the story is over. They are wrong. The story of the man is over. The story of the god is beginning. In Japanese theology, when a person dies with intense rage, regret, or a grudge, their spirit does not pass peacefully to the ancestors. It becomes a goryo, an angry ghost, a vengeful spirit. And the power of the goryo is proportional to the injustice they suffered in life. Michizane was innocent, and he was a man of immense mental power. Therefore, his ghost was not a wisp of smoke. It was a nuclear reactor of spiritual rage. The haunting began slowly. First, it was the weather. Kyoto, usually temperate, was plagued by storms. Not just rain, but violent, shaking thunderstorms that lingered for days. The sky over the capital seemed permanently bruised. Then, the deaths began. Fujiwara no Tokihira, the man who had orchestrated Michizane's exile, the architect of the lie, fell ill. It was not a normal sickness. He claimed to see dragons coiling around his bed. He claimed to see Michizane's face in the shadows. He died young, screaming, at the age of 38. The court was rattled. They began to suspect. But the spirit was not satisfied with one death. One by one, the conspirators who had signed the decree of exile began to die. Accidents, sudden fevers, lightning strikes. The crown prince died. Then the next crown prince died. The lineage of the emperor was being pruned by an invisible hand. And then came the day of the apocalypse. June 26th, in the year 930 A.D. The Emperor Daigo and his high ministers were gathered in the Seiryo Den, the Hall of Pure Coolness. This was the private residence of the emperor within the imperial palace compound. It was the heart of political power in Japan. They were discussing the drought. Ironically, they were praying for rain. They got it. A massive cloud bank rose from the direction of Mount Atago. It was black as ink. It moved with unnatural speed, swallowing the sun. The air pressure in the palace dropped so sharply that the courtiers felt their ears pop. The birds stopped singing. The cicadas fell silent. The wind began to howl, tearing the shutters off the windows. Rain lashed the cypress bark roof like gravel. And then, the center of the storm positioned itself directly over the Seiryoden. The thunder was deafening. It was not the rolling rumble of distant hills. It was the crack of the whip right above their heads. The emperor, terrified, ordered the priests to chant. At 1 p.m., the sky tore open. A lightning bolt, massive, blinding, and jagged, struck the Seiryoden. It did not hit a tree in the garden. It hit the master pillar of the hall. The sound was like the world ending. Wood shattered. The smell of ozone and burning timber filled the room instantly. But the lightning did not just break wood. It hunted. Fujiwara no Kiyotsura, a senior noble who had been part of the anti-Michizane faction, was struck directly in the chest. His clothes ignited. He was split open. Another noble, Taira no Moreo, was burned to a crisp beside him. Several guards were killed instantly. Chaos erupted. The room filled with smoke and the stench of roasted flesh. Courtiers were screaming, scrambling over the bodies of the dead, trying to escape the burning hall. The Emperor Daigo rushed out, his robes disheveled, his eyes wide with a terror that no emperor should ever feel. He survived the strike, but his spirit was shattered. He had seen the wrath of the heavens strike his own house. He had seen his advisors cooked by the sky. He fell ill immediately. 3 months later, Emperor Daigo died. The message was undeniable. This was not a weather anomaly. This was an assassination. The lightning had a target. It had bypassed the innocent and struck the guilty. The people of Kyoto looked at the blackened ruins of the palace, and they whispered the name. It is Michizane. They realized that the scholar had merged with the ancient deities of the sky. His rage had become the conduit for the 8 thunders. He was no longer Sugawara no Michizane. He had become Tenjin, the heavenly deity. Specifically, he was Karai Tenjin, the fire-thunder heavenly deity. The scholar who loved plum blossoms had become the demon who burned palaces. The imperial court, now thoroughly defeated by the ghost, did the only thing they could do. They surrendered. They rescinded the order of exile. They restored Michizane to his former rank. In fact, they promoted him. They gave a dead man the title of Senior First Rank and Chancellor of the Realm. They tried to bribe the ghost with promotions, but promotions were not enough. They needed to build him a house. They identified a location in the northwest of the city, the direction from which the storms usually came. They built the Kitano Tenmangu Shrine. This was a seismic shift in Japanese religion. Before this, shrines were for nature spirits, rocks, trees, waterfalls, or for mythological ancestors. This was the first time a major shrine was built for a human being. It was a shrine built out of fear. The prayers offered there were not, "Please help me study." They were, "Please do not kill us. Please stop the lightning." For a century, Tenjin was the god of calamity. He was the Tataringami, the cursing god. But time acts like water on a stone. It smooths the edges. As the years passed, the terror of the Seiryoden incident faded into legend. The Fujiwara clan eventually died out or lost power. The specific grievances of Michizane were forgotten, but his identity as a scholar remained. People remembered that he was a genius. They remembered his beautiful poetry. And slowly, the god of lightning began to transform again. The parents of Kyoto began to think, he was so smart in life. Perhaps if we pray to him, he will make our children smart too. The Goryo became the patron saint of academics. Today, if you visit Kitano Tenmangu in Kyoto or Yushima Tenjin in Tokyo, you will not see people cowering in fear of thunder. You will see thousands of students. They are there to buy amulets for their high school entrance exams. They write their wishes on wooden ima plaques, asking Tenjin-sama for good grades. They pet the bronze statues of the oxen. Remember the ox that stopped at his funeral? It is one of the supreme ironies of mythology. The god who burned the emperor to death is now the god who helps you pass your math test. But the thunder has not left him. Look closely at the crest of the Tenjin shrines. It is the plum blossom, a symbol of his poetry. But look at the atmosphere. The shrines are often planted with thousands of plum trees. When they bloom in February, it is beautiful. But in the summer, when the heat rises in the Kyoto basin, and the cumulonimbus clouds stack up over the mountains, the priests still remember. They know that Tenjin is the mask, but Raijin is the muscle. Michizane acts as the bridge between the human world and the raw power of the storm. He humanized the lightning. He gave it a tragic backstory. Before Michizane, thunder was just nature. After Michizane, thunder was moral. It was the sound of a grievance being aired. This story of the Seiryo-den incident is crucial because it cemented the image of the thunder god as a figure of authority. Raijin is not a chaotic trickster like Susanoo. Raijin, via Tenjin, is a magistrate. He strikes from above to punish those who have violated the natural order or the laws of justice. The lightning bolt is the gavel of the judge. And this fear of the justice of the sky trickled down from the aristocrats to the common people. The farmers in the fields heard the story of the burning palace. They looked at their own lives. They realized that if the lightning could kill a noble in the hall of pure coolness, it could certainly kill a peasant in a rice paddy. This brings us to the folklore of the countryside. The high drama of the court is over. The ghost has been appeased with a shrine, but the storm still rolls over the villages. And the common people needed their own ways to deal with Raijin. They didn't have the money to build shrines. They had superstitions. They had magic words. Have you ever heard the phrase, Kuwabara, Kuwabara? If you watch anime or read manga, you might have heard a character mutter it when they are scared. Kuwabara, Kuwabara. It is a spell, a shield of words against the lightning. But where does it come from? It leads us back to our angry scholar. Kuwabara means mulberry field. And legend says that Sugawara no Michizane owned a parcel of land, a mulberry field, where he never ever struck with lightning. Even when he was raging as a storm god, he spared his own property. So the farmers reasoned, if we pretend we are in his mulberry field, maybe he won't hit us. Kuwabara, Kuwabara. I am in the mulberry field. I am in the mulberry field. Do not strike. It is a beautiful, desperate piece of human logic, trying to trick a god with a postal code. But what of the beast? The Japanese imagination is fertile. It does not stop at gods and ghosts. It creates monsters. Raijin rides the clouds, yes, but does he have a pet? Does he have an animal avatar that runs on the ground? Deep in the woods, something is moving. It is small. It looks like a badger, or maybe a cat, or maybe a weasel. But it glows blue. And when it cries, it sounds like the crack of doom. This is the Raiju, the thunder beast. We must leave the imperial capital now. We must put away our history books and walk into the realm of yokai, the strange apparitions. We are going to the countryside of the Edo period. We are going to chase the blue wolf that falls from the sky. We are going to learn why you should never, ever sleep face up during a storm. And we are going to meet the man who did the impossible, the man who caught the thunder god in a sack. The drums are fading into the distance, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the strange electric chirping of an animal that shouldn't exist. The heavy silk robes of the imperial court have rustled away into history. The smell of burning palaces has faded. We leave behind the high drama of vengeful ghosts and trembling emperors. We are walking away from the capital, away from the stone-paved streets of Kyoto, and stepping onto a narrow dirt path. The air here is different. It smells of wet earth, of green stagnation, of frogs and mud. We are entering the world of the Japanese farmer. For the vast majority of Japanese history, the story of the nation was not written in poems. It was written in rice. And in the life of the rice farmer, the storm is not a political event. It is an erotic one. We have spoken of Raijin as a monster of the underworld and a guardian of the temple. But to the peasant standing knee-deep in the flooded paddy, wiping sweat from his brow under the oppressive heat of July, Raijin is something much more intimate. He is a partner. He is a lover. He is the husband of the harvest. This intimacy is encoded in the very language itself. Words are fossils of belief. If you dig into the etymology of everyday Japanese, you find the bones of ancient myths. Consider the word for lightning. In English, lightning is purely descriptive. It is a thing that lightens, a flash. In French, éclair implies a burst of light. But in Japanese, the word is Inazuma. Let us break this word down, for it contains the entire agricultural theology of ancient Japan. Ina is a shortened form of ine, which means rice plant. Not the white grain you eat in a bowl, which is gohan, but the living, growing stalk in the field. Zuma is a voicing of tsuma. In modern Japanese, tsuma usually means wife. But in the ancient Yamato language of the Manyoshu era, tsuma was gender neutral. It simply meant spouse. It meant husband or wife, an intimate partner. So Inazuma literally translates to the spouse of the rice. Let that sink in. When a Japanese person points to a bolt of lightning zigzagging across the sky, they are not saying, "Look, electricity." They are saying, "Look, the rice husband is here." Why? Why would a destructive force of fire be married to a delicate plant growing in water? The logic is rooted in observation. The rice growing season in Japan coincides perfectly with the typhoon season and the summer thunderstorms. The crucial time for the rice plants to head, to form the grains, is late summer. This is exactly when the cumulonimbus clouds, the Nudogumo, tower over the mountains like angry giants. The farmers noticed a pattern. In years where there were many thunderstorms, the rice grew tall. The grains were full. The harvest was abundant. In years where the sky was clear and silent, the rice was often weak. They did not know about nitrogen fixation. They did not know that the extreme heat of a lightning bolt, 30,000 degrees Kelvin, breaks the strong bonds of atmospheric nitrogen molecules, allowing them to combine with oxygen to form nitrogen oxides. They did not know that the rain then dissolves these oxides and carries them down to the soil as nitrates, a natural, high-potency fertilizer. Science tells us today that lightning is responsible for a significant percentage of the world's natural nitrogen production. The ancient Japanese did not have the chemistry, but they had the metaphor. They saw the bolt strike the field. They saw the spear of the god penetrate the wet earth. And weeks later, they saw the belly of the rice plant swell with grain. The conclusion was obvious. The rice plants are female. The thunder is male. The flash in the sky is the act of cosmic copulation. Raijin, therefore, is not trying to destroy the field. He is making love to it. The thunderclap is the cry of passion. The rain is the release. The Inazuma is the visible proof that the marriage has been consummated. This belief transformed the fear of the storm into a complex gratitude. Yes, the lightning could kill you. It could burn your house. But without it, the village would starve. It was a dangerous affair, a marriage to a volatile deity who might beat you one moment and feed you the next. In the No plays and Kyogen comedies of the medieval era, we sometimes see this relationship played out. The spirit of the rice field waits for the thunder. She is longing for him. The heat of the summer is her desire rising, summoning the storm from the mountains. But this relationship wasn't just linguistic. It was ritualistic. In many parts of rural Japan, there were ceremonies to invite the thunder. The amagoi, praying for rain. Rituals often involved loud noises, beating drums, ringing bells, shouting. It was an attempt to mimic the sound of Raijin, to call out to him, "We are drumming! Come and drum with us. Your wives are waiting in the mud." And when the storm arrived, the behavior of the people changed. If you were outside in the Inazuma mode, you welcomed the rain. But if you were inside, that was a different story. Because Raijin has a dark side, a peculiar predatory hunger that has terrified Japanese children for 1,000 years. Imagine a traditional Japanese house in the Edo period. Wooden pillars, sliding paper doors, shoji, tatami mats on the floor. It is a structure that breathes. It is open to the elements. When the thunder shakes the ground, the whole house rattles. The paper doors vibrate like the membrane of a drum. The family gathers in the center of the room. The mosquito net, a green hemp tent called a kaya, is hung up, and the grandmother leans in, her voice low and serious, and says the words that every Japanese child knows. Kaminari sama ga heso o tori ni kuru. The thunder god is coming to take your belly button. Hide your navel. Kaminari-sama wants to eat it. Why? Of all the body parts, why the navel? Why does the mighty Raijin, the drummer of the skies, have a fetish for the human belly button? There are many theories, ranging from the medical to the mythological. Let us look at the practical side first. Japan is humid. The summer heat is stifling. Children run around half naked, their bellies exposed. But when a thunderstorm rolls in, the pressure drops. The wind picks up. The temperature can plummet 10 degrees in a matter of minutes. If a sweating child leaves their stomach exposed to this sudden cold draft, they can get a stomachache. they can get diarrhea. In the days before modern medicine, a cold in the bowels was a serious ailment for a child. So, parents invented a lie to keep them warm. Cover your belly, or the monster will eat it. It is the perfect parenting hack. Fear is a better motivator than advice. A child will ignore, "put on a shirt," but they will not ignore, "a red demon wants to rip off your navel." But in mythology, the practical explanation is rarely the only one. There is a deeper resonance here. The navel, the heso, is the center of the body. In East Asian philosophy, the region just below the navel, the tanden, is the reservoir of chi, life energy. It is the anchor of the soul. By threatening the navel, Raijin is threatening the core of your being. He is threatening to unplug you from life. Remember his origins. Remember the 8 thunders, born in the rotting corpse of Izanami. One of them, Kuro Ikazuchi, Black Thunder, was born in her belly. Is Raijin trying to return to the womb? Is this an echo of the severed umbilical cord of the cosmos? Or does he simply like the shape? The navel is a spiral. It looks like the tomoe symbol on his drums. Perhaps he collects them. Perhaps he wears a necklace of stolen belly buttons, little fleshy swirls that remind him of the storm. The image is both funny and horrifying. In ukiyo-e, prints from the Edo period, we see comedic depictions of this. We see Raijin sitting on a cloud, holding a pair of tweezers, peering down at the earth, hunting for exposed navels. We see commoners running in panic, clutching their stomachs with both hands, diving under mosquito nets. It turned the terrifying god into a bit of a pervert, a grotesque neighbor who needed to be managed rather than worshipped. And how do you manage him? How do you protect yourself when the navel hunter comes? You use the mosquito net. The kaya. In the Edo period, the mosquito net was a sacred space. It was a box of safety. The mesh was too fine for mosquitoes, and, by magical logic, too fine for lightning. The thunder is big. The holes are small. Therefore, Raijin cannot get in. Whole families would huddle under the green hemp net during a storm, trembling, holding their bellies, waiting for the Inazuma to finish his business with the rice fields outside. But what if you are caught outside? What if there is no net? Then you must use the power of words. You must use the spell we touched upon earlier. The spell of the scholar. Kuwabara, Kuwabara. This chant is deeply embedded in the Japanese psyche. Even today, older people might mutter it instinctively when a flash of lightning is too close. Kuwabara means mulberry field. Kuwa, mulberry. Bara/hara, field. Why mulberry? There are 2 layers to this shield. The first is the legend of Tenjin, which we explored. Sugawara no Michizane, the vengeful ghost who became the thunder god, had a favorite estate in the Kuwabara district. Or, in some versions, his land had many mulberry trees. When he rained lightning down on Kyoto, he scrupulously avoided his own property. Therefore, by shouting "Mulberry Field," you are declaring, "I am Michizane's land. I am friendly territory. Do not shoot." It is a camouflage spell. You are disguising yourself as the god's own backyard. The second layer is biological. Mulberry trees are the food of silkworms. Sericulture, silk production, was a massive industry in Japan. Mulberry trees were valuable. There is a folk belief that mulberry trees are resistant to lightning. Unlike the tall cedar or the pine, which are often struck and shattered, the mulberry tends to be low, bushy, and resilient. Furthermore, there is a connection back to the fire god. In ancient Chinese cosmology, which heavily influenced Japan, the red bird of the south governs fire. The mulberry tree is associated with the direction of the east/wood, but in the complex game of elemental rock, paper, scissors, there was a belief that the mulberry possessed an energy that repelled the sky fire. So, the farmer, standing in the rain, chants, "Kuwabara!" He clutches his belly button to hide his life force. He watches the rice spouse fertilize his crop. It is a moment of total engagement with the myth. He is protecting his body, protecting his soul, and acknowledging the source of his food, all at once. This is the beauty of the Edo period perspective. The gods were not distant concepts discussed by theologians. They were neighbors. They were loud, dangerous, navel-stealing, rice-impregnating neighbors. Life was lived in the presence of the invisible. When the wood of the house creaked, it might be a yanari, house spirit. When a sudden wind blew, it might be a kamitachi, weasel beast. And when the sky roared, it was the drummer. But there is another aspect to this folklore, one that bridges the gap between the human and the beast. Raijin rides the clouds, but he does not always stay there. Sometimes he falls. There are stories, hundreds of them, of thunder falls, Raijin Ochi. A bolt of lightning strikes the ground, and there, in the smoking crater, lies a creature. Sometimes it is the god himself, dazed and confused, having lost his footing on a slippery cloud. But more often, it is his pet, his avatar, the beast. The farmers knew that the lightning moved like an animal. It jumped, it bit, it had a claw. And so they imagined that Raijin was not hunting alone. He had a hound, a creature made of blue fire and white fur, a creature that slept in the hollows of trees and, yes, inside human navels. This creature is the Raiju. The superstitions of the navel and the mulberry field are defenses against the god, but the Raiju represents the physical manifestation of the lightning strike on the ground. If Raijin is the pilot, Raiju is the bomb, and the stories of this beast are among the strangest in all of Japanese folklore. They tell of a creature that is not quite a wolf, not quite a weasel, not quite a badger, a chimera of electricity. As the storm passes over the rice spouse's field, and the farmer lowers his hands from his navel, he looks at the scorched tree on the edge of the forest. He sees claw marks on the bark. He sees a strange blue glow fading in the undergrowth. He knows that the thunder beast has visited. But what exactly is this beast? And can it be caught? Can a mortal man trap the lightning in a sack? History, or at least the strange tales recorded by the monks, says yes. There was a man named Sugawara, and he did not fear the navel eater. He hunted him. We must leave the safety of the mosquito net now. The storm is not over. It has just touched the ground. We are going to follow the blue glow into the forest. We are going to meet the thunder beast. And we are going to witness the supreme audacity of a human being who looked at the god of the sky and said, "Get in the bag." The storm has passed. The heavy curtains of rain have lifted, revealing a sky that is washing itself clean with a pale, watery sunlight. The rice paddies are full, the water level lapping at the muddy banks. The air is no longer oppressive. It is cool, smelling of wet asphalt, crushed pine needles, and that distinct metallic tang of ozone. But in the forest, something is glowing. We are leaving the village now. We are walking past the mulberry fields where the farmers are slowly lowering their hands from their navels, breathing sighs of relief. We are entering the deep woods, the Yokai, where the cedar trees stand tall and silent. Look at that tree over there, the great cryptomeria. It has been struck. A strip of bark has been peeled away from the top to the bottom, spiraling down the trunk like a white scar. The wood is smoking. The sap is boiling, bubbling out like amber tears. But look closer at the base of the tree. There are claw marks, deep, gouging scratches in the wood. And there is a smell, not just the smell of burning wood, but the smell of singed fur, the smell of a wild animal that has bathed in sulfur. We have entered the territory of the Raiju, the thunder beast. In the vast zoology of Japanese mythology, the Raiju is a creature that defies easy classification. It is the physical avatar of the lightning bolt. When Raijin, the red demon, beats his drums in the clouds, he is the conductor. But the Raiju is the instrument. It is the living missile that is launched from the sky to the earth. What does it look like? The Edo period encyclopedias, like the Wakan Sansai Zue, struggle to describe it because it is a shapeshifter. It is composed of flesh and fire. Most often, it is described as looking like a white and blue wolf, or perhaps a badger, or a weasel. It is about the size of a large cat or a small dog. Its fur is not ordinary fur. It is thick, bristly, and stands on end, perpetually charged with static electricity. If you were to touch it, which you must never do, it would shock you. Its eyes are glowing orbs, crackling with the same blue light that illuminates the storm clouds. And its tail is often depicted as a fork of lightning, branching out into jagged spikes. This creature rides on the back of the storm clouds. It leaps from one cumulus tower to another, playing among the thunderheads. But sometimes, in its excitement, or perhaps by the command of the god, it falls. It crashes to the earth in a flash of blinding light. This phenomenon is called Raijin Ochi, the thunder fall. To the ancient Japanese, a lightning strike was not an electrical discharge. It was a physical impact. A beast had landed. And like any confused animal that has fallen from a great height, the Raiju is dangerous. It runs wild. It tears at the bark of trees. These are the Raiju claws that explain the peculiar way lightning strips bark from timber. It sets fire to roofs with its tail. It runs through the bamboo groves, leaving a trail of blue fire. But the most peculiar habit of this beast brings us back to the navel. We spoke in the previous chapter of hiding your belly button from Raijin. The folklore often blurs the line between the god and the beast. It is said that the Raiju, terrified by the crash of its own arrival, seeks a place to hide. It seeks a warm, dark, enclosed space. And it finds the human navel to be the perfect burrow. This is the true horror of the hide your navel superstition. It is not just that the god will eat it. It is that the beast will crawl inside it. Imagine the folklore logic. You are sleeping face up during a storm. Your navel is exposed. The Raiju falls from the sky, shrinks itself down into a ball of static energy, and dives into your belly button to sleep. Now, you have a lightning wolf sleeping in your gut. And here is the tragedy. When Raijin, the god, looks down from the clouds and sees his pet missing, he looks for it. He spots it sleeping in your belly. And to wake it up, to call it back to the sky, he throws a lightning bolt at it. He strikes you to retrieve his pet. Therefore, hiding your navel is not just about warmth. It is about refusing to be a nest for a monster. But surely, these are just peasant tales, just stories to explain the charred trees and the sudden fires? Perhaps. But in the ancient chronicles of Japan, the line between the story and the history is very thin, and there is a record, a specific, dated record, of a man who did not fear the beast, a man who did not hide under a mosquito net, a man who was ordered to catch the thunder. This is the legend of Shugaru. We must travel back in time, further back than the refined Heian court of Sugawara no Michizane. We are going to the 5th century, the Kofun period, the reign of Emperor Yuryaku. Emperor Yuryaku was a powerful, somewhat terrifying ruler. He is often depicted as a warrior king, a man of immense will who believed that even the gods should bow to the imperial throne. The story is recorded in the Nihon Ryoiki, the record of miraculous events in Japan. It begins on a morning after a restless night. The Emperor Yuryaku is in his palace at Hatsuse. He wishes to be with the Empress. He moves to the quarter of the Empress, intending to share her bed. But just as he enters, there is a sound, a massive clap of thunder. It is not outside. It is inside the palace, or directly above it. The building shakes. The privacy of the emperor is violated. The mood is ruined. Yuryaku is furious. In the ancient world, the emperor was a god king. No one interrupted him, not even the weather. He steps out onto the veranda. He looks up at the dark, swirling sky. He does not cower. He shouts, "Who is this deity that dares to make a noise when I am about to be with my empress?" He summons his chief retainer, a man named Shugaru. Shugaru is a loyal servant, a man of the court, but he is about to be given the most impossible task in history. The emperor points a finger at the booming sky. "Shugaru," he commands, "bring the thunder deity to me." Silence falls on the courtyard. The courtiers look at the ground. Bring the thunder. You might as well ask a man to bring the horizon or to catch the wind in a net. It is a death sentence. It is madness. But Shugaru does not blink. He does not argue. In the code of the ancient retainer, the emperor's word is absolute reality. If the emperor says the thunder can be caught, then it must be caught. "I obey," Shugaru says. He prepares for the hunt. He does not put on armor of iron, for iron attracts the strike. He dresses in the colors of the priesthood and the court. He ties a red headband around his forehead, red, the color of protection and vitality. He takes a horse, and he takes a weapon, a halberd with a red banner attached to it. He rides out of the palace gates. He leaves the safety of the capital and rides toward the mountain where the storm is anchored. Mount Abe. Imagine the scene. A lone horseman riding into the teeth of a typhoon. The wind is trying to blow him off his mount. The rain is stinging his face like needles. The sky is exploding with light, violet, white, blue. The thunder is so loud it vibrates his bones. Shugaru rides up the mountain path. He reaches the high plateaus where the clouds are touching the earth. He stops his horse. He looks up into the swirling vortex of the storm. He does not cower. He does not pray for mercy. He shouts with the authority of the emperor. "O thunder deity!" he bellows against the roar of the wind. "The emperor summons you. If you are a deity of this land, you must obey the Son of Heaven." He waits. The wind howls. "Even the spirits of the mountains and rivers obey the emperor," Sugawara yells. "How dare you refuse?" And then it happens. A bolt of lightning strikes the ground just in front of him. The earth explodes. Smoke and steam billow up. The horse rears, terrified. Sugawara leaps from the saddle. He does not run away. He runs toward the impact site. In the crater, amidst the smoke, something is writhing. The Nihon Ryoiki does not describe it as a man with drums. It describes it as a great snake, or a fire thing. It is the raw essence of the thunder, temporarily trapped in a physical form by the force of the impact. Sugawara throws his priest's frantic, mystical energy over it. He commands it to be still, and miraculously, the thunder obeys. Perhaps it is stunned. Perhaps it recognizes the authority of the red headband. Sugawara calls for his priests to bring a portable shrine, a palanquin, or a sack. Versions vary. He bundles the entity up. He has done the impossible. He has the thunder in a bag. He rides back to the palace. The storm overhead begins to dissipate, its heart removed. He enters the courtyard. He is soaked, muddy, smelling of ozone. He kneels before Emperor Yoryaku. "Your Majesty," he says, "I have brought the thunder deity." The emperor is skeptical. He expected an excuse. He expected Sugawara to fail. "Show me," the emperor says. Sugawara opens the container, or he pulls back the curtain of the portable shrine, and the thunder looks back. A blinding light fills the courtyard. The eyes of the deity, burning with the intensity of 1,000 suns, fix upon the emperor. The heat is instantaneous. The light is so pure, so terrifying, that it threatens to melt the very retinas of the observers. Emperor Yoryaku, the warrior king, the man who shouted at the sky, collapses. Terror seizes him. He realizes the hubris of his request. He covers his eyes. He scrambles backward, his robes tangling. "Take it away!" he screams. "Take it away! I have seen enough!" Sugawara, calm and composed, covers the deity. He closes the shrine. The light vanishes. The courtyard returns to the gray dampness of the afternoon. The emperor, shaking, orders offerings to be made. He orders silk, swords, and rice to be given to the thunder to appease its anger. He orders Sugawara to take it back to where he found it. Sugawara rides back to the mountain. He releases the deity. The entity ascends back into the clouds, and the storm rolls away, rumbling with a sound that might be laughter, or might be a warning. Sugawara returns a hero. The emperor gives him a new name, Ikazuchi no Sukune, the Lord of Thunder. But the story has a coda, a haunting ending that reminds us that while you can catch a god, you cannot own him. Years pass. Sugawara, the thunder catcher, eventually dies of old age. The emperor orders a grand funeral, but he also wants to make a point. He wants the world to remember the man who commanded the sky. He orders a tomb to be built, and on the tombstone he orders an inscription: the tomb of Sugawara, who caught the thunder. It is a boast, a final flex of imperial power. But the thunder is watching. 7 days after the funeral, a massive storm rolls over the cemetery. A single, massive bolt of lightning descends from the zenith. It strikes the tombstone of Sugawara. It splits the stone in half. It shatters the inscription. The emperor is informed. He goes to see the damage. The rock is blackened. The characters for "Caught the Thunder" are obliterated. The message from the sky is clear. You caught me once, by my permission. Do not brag about it. But here is the twist, the final irony of the folklore. The lightning struck the stone, but it did not scatter the stones. The strike was precise. It fell into the crack of the stone and remained there. The emperor, seeing this, realized that even in death, Sugawara was still connected to the deity. He ordered the pillar to be re-erected, and he changed the inscription. He named the site Ikazuchi no Oka, the Hill of Thunder, and it stands there to this day in the Nara prefecture. This legend of Sugawara is pivotal because it changes the relationship again. In the beginning, we feared the thunder, origins. Then we worshipped it, iconography. Then we merged with it, Tenjin. Then we invited it, Inazuma. And now, with Sugawara, we tried to control it. It marks the transition of Japan from a land of primitive awe to a land of structured confidence. The Yamato state was asserting its dominance over nature. The emperor was claiming that his political power was stronger than the elemental power. And the thunder's response was ambiguous. I will submit to your ritual, but I will smash your tombstone. It is a relationship of mutual respect and tension. But let us return to the creature itself, the Raiju. While Sugawara caught the deity, the common people continued to encounter the beast. Throughout the Edo period, there were reported sightings of the Raiju. In 1766, on Mount Oyama, a peasant claimed to have seen a Raiju trapped in the fork of a tree. He described it as having the face of a cat, the fur of a badger, and claws like iron hooks. In the 1800s, traveling sideshows, misamono, would sometimes claim to have a mummified Raiju. They would display a shriveled, ugly little thing in a wooden box. Step right up. See the thunder beast that fell from the sky in the great storm of last autumn. Usually, these were fakes, stitched together from weasels and monkeys. But the fact that people paid to see them shows the grip this creature had on the imagination. The Raiju represents the wild, untamed, chaotic aspect of the lightning. Raijin, the god, has a job. He beats the drums. He brings the rain. He has a schedule. But the Raiju is just a wild animal made of electricity. It tears things up for no reason. It sleeps in navels because it is cold. It is the unpredictable spark that burns down a house even when the prayers have been said. It is the element of chance. You can build the shrine. You can chant Kuwabara. You can be a good person. But sometimes the beast just falls on your roof. Sometimes the lightning strikes the mulberry field anyway. This acceptance of randomness is a key part of the Japanese worldview. Mono, no aware. The pathos of things. The beauty of transience. The storm comes, and it destroys. And then it leaves, and the sun comes out. You cannot police the sky. You can only survive it. As we reach the end of our exploration of the folklore, we find that we have covered the earth and the sky. We have seen the navels and the tombs, but there is one final piece of the puzzle. Raijin is rarely alone. We mentioned him briefly before, but we have not given him his due. The green demon, the bag holder, the wind. For the Japanese storm is not just thunder. It is the typhoon. It is the combination of wind and rain. And the story of Raijin is incomplete without the story of the Kamikaze, the divine wind. The moment when Raijin and Fujin stopped playing drums and started fighting a war. A war against a foreign invasion. A war that saved Japan from annihilation. We must leave the peaceful woods of Nara. We must travel to the coast of Hakata Bay. The year is 1274. The horizon is filled with thousands of ships. The Mongols are coming. The great Khan has turned his gaze toward the rising sun, and the thunder god is about to get drafted into the military. The drums are beating a war rhythm now. The beast has returned to the clouds. The scholar is watching from the shrine, and the final storm is about to break. The storm is not just a solo performance. We have spent hours listening to the drums of Raijin. We have watched him rise from the rot of the underworld. We have seen him burn palaces, and we have seen him fertilize the rice fields. But sound cannot travel in a vacuum. The thunder needs a medium. It needs the air, and the air has a master of its own. In the final chapter of our saga, we must introduce the shadow to Raijin's light, the silence to his noise, the breath to his heartbeat. We must meet Fujin, the wind god, and we must witness the moment when these two wild demons stopped being merely forces of nature and became the saviors of Japan. If you look at the entrance of a great Buddhist temple, like the Sensoji in Tokyo or the Todaiji in Nara, you will see them. They are the gatekeepers. On the left, usually, is Raijin, the red-skinned drummer. On the right is Fujin. He is often green or blue. He looks less like a bodybuilder and more like a twisted, gnarled root of an ancient tree. He carries a large bag draped over his shoulders, a bag that looks heavy, filled not with gold, but with the compressed fury of the atmosphere. He holds the ends of the bag with both hands. If he opens it a crack, a gentle breeze rustles the cherry blossoms. If he opens it wide, houses are torn from their foundations. Fujin, like Raijin, has a primal origin. When Izanagi, the creator god, washed the filth of the underworld from his face, he blew his nose. But before that, in some versions of the Nihon Shoki, Fujin was born from the breath of Izanami as she lay dying in the morning mists. He is Shinatsuhiko, the prince of the long breath. He is the air that fills the space between heaven and earth. For centuries, Raijin and Fujin were rivals. The wind and the thunder compete for dominance in the sky. But in the 13th century, a threat appeared on the horizon that forced them to unite. This was not a mythical threat. This was steel and wood. This was the Mongol Empire. The year is 1274, the Bun'ai era. Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, sits on the throne of the Yuan dynasty in China. He rules the largest contiguous land empire in human history. He has conquered the steppes. He has conquered China. He has conquered Korea. And now he looks across the narrow strait of water toward the Wa, the land of Japan. He demands submission. The Japanese samurai, fierce and proud, refuse. So the Khan sends a fleet, hundreds of ships, tens of thousands of soldiers. They land at Hakata Bay on the island of Kyushu. The samurai fight bravely, but they are outmatched. The Mongols have superior tactics. They fight in tight formations, moving like a machine to the sound of gongs. They have a terrifying new weapon, Tetsu Hao, exploding iron bombs filled with gunpowder. The Japanese, who are used to ritualized one-on-one combat, are overwhelmed. The situation is desperate. The fall of Japan seems inevitable. The emperor and the retired emperor Go-Uda order prayers. They do not just pray for strategy. They pray for a miracle. They send messengers to the great shrines, to Ise, to Hachiman, to Kitano Tenmangu, the home of our scholar god Tenjin. They beg the kami to wake up. "Defend your land," they cry. "Defend your children." And the sky answers. On the night of the battle, the barometer drops. The sea turns black. The wind begins to rotate. A massive typhoon slams into Hakata Bay. It is not a normal storm. It is a shredder. The Mongol ships, anchored in the bay, are smashed against each other. The wooden hulls are splintered like matchsticks. The invading army is drowned in the churning black water. By morning, the fleet is gone. The survivors retreat in terror. Japan is saved. But the Khan is not a man who accepts defeat. He spends 7 years building a new fleet, a fleet so massive that it is said the majestic forests of Korea were stripped bare to build the hulls. In 1281, he returns. The Koan Campaign. This time, the fleet numbers over 4,000 ships. It carries 140,000 men. It is the largest naval invasion force the world will see until D-Day in 1944. The Japanese have built a stone wall along the coast. They fight with desperation. They hold the beach for weeks, but they are exhausted. The sheer weight of numbers is crushing them. The end is near. The divine land is about to be swallowed by the Yuan dragon. And then, on August the 15th, 1281, the drums begin to beat. It starts as a low rumble in the south. The air turns that sickly, greenish-yellow color that signals extreme violence. Fujin opens his bag. He does not just open it, he rips it apart. Raijin strikes every drum in his halo at once. A super typhoon, a storm of biblical proportions, descends upon the fleet. The descriptions in the Hachiman Gudokun are apocalyptic. Waves the size of mountains. Wind that lifts men into the air and dashes them against the rocks. The massive Chinese junk ships are tossed like leaves. They collide, they capsize, they are driven into the seabed. Lightning, Raijin's spear, strikes the masts, setting the sails on fire even as they drown. It is said that Raijin and Fujin were seen in the clouds, not as metaphors, but as giants. The red demon and the green demon, standing shoulder to shoulder, looking down at the invaders. Raijin beating the rhythm of destruction. Fujin exhaling the breath of death. When the sun rose, the water of Hakata Bay was choked with timber and bodies. The Mongol fleet was destroyed. Japan was saved again. This event changed the national consciousness forever. They called it the Kamikaze. Kami, God/divine. Kaze, wind. The divine wind. We must pause here to acknowledge the dark shadow this word cast in the 20th century. During World War II, this term was co-opted for suicide tactics. But in the 13th century, it meant something pure. It meant that the land itself was alive. It meant that the geography of Japan would not allow itself to be conquered. For Raijin, this was his graduation. He was no longer just the scary navel eater. He was no longer just the angry ghost of a scholar. He was the patriot. He was the ultimate weapon of national defense. He proved that the rough spirit, arimitama, was necessary. You cannot protect a country with kindness alone. Sometimes you need the storm. This victory solidified the partnership of wind and thunder in the artistic imagination. And this brings us to the image that likely floats in your mind when you hear their names. The golden screens. Jump forward in time. It is the early 17th century. The chaos of the warring states is over. The Tokugawa shogunate has brought peace. In Kyoto, a master artist named Tawaraya Sotatsu is working. He is commissioned by the Kenninji Temple to create a pair of folding screens. He takes the paper. He applies gold leaf, square after square of pure shimmering gold. The gold represents the void, the infinite space of the heavens. It is Ma, the negative space that is full of potential. And on this gold, he paints the gods. He does not paint a landscape. There are no mountains, no trees, no rice fields. There is only the gold, the wind, and the thunder. On the right screen, Fujin. He is running downward, his body green, his hair wild. He grips his white windbag with both hands. He looks mischievous, almost smiling. He is the force of movement. On the left screen, Raijin. He is white, a variation from the usual red, his muscles bulging. He is surrounded by his ring of drums. He is looking back at Fujin. Their eyes meet across the golden void. This masterpiece, the wind and thunder god screens, Fujin Raijin Zoo, is a national treasure. It defines the Rimpa school of art. But why is it so powerful? Because Sotatsu captured the tension. They are not fighting, they are dancing. They are rotating around each other in an eternal cycle. High pressure and low pressure, heat and cold, expansion and contraction. The artist realized that they are not two separate gods. They are two sides of the same atmospheric coin. You cannot have thunder without the collision of air masses. You cannot have the wind without the thermal energy that the storm releases. They are the eternal balance. This image has been copied by Ogata Koren, by Sakai Hoitsu, by countless modern artists. It is on the 500 yen coin. It is an anime. It is the visual shorthand for the power of nature. So, where is Raijin today? We have walked a long road. We are standing in the 21st century now. The skyscrapers of Tokyo have lightning rods to catch his spears. The satellites predict his typhoons days in advance. We no longer hide under mosquito nets believing a beast will eat our navels. Has the god died? Has science killed the thunder? No, because myths do not die. They just change their clothes. Raijin lives on in the festivals. Go to the Omizutori, Water Drawing Festival at Todaiji in Nara. It happens in early March. It is a Buddhist ritual, but it is filled with ancient fire and thunder symbolism. Giant torches are carried onto the balcony of the temple, showering sparks down on the crowd. It is a purification by fire, a mimicking of the lightning to usher in the spring. The priests blow conch shells that sound like the low rumble of distant thunder. Raijin lives on in sumo. Look at the dohyo, the sumo ring. It is a sacred space. Above the ring hangs a roof, modeled after a Shinto shrine. And in the corners, hanging from the roof, are tassels. A green tassel, spring/wind. A red tassel, summer/fire. A white tassel, autumn/metal. A black tassel, winter/water. When the sumo wrestler enters the ring, what does he do? He lifts his leg high in the air and stomps it down on the clay. Shiko. This is not just a stretch. It is a ritual. It is earth stamping. It is designed to wake up the spirits of the earth. It is designed to crush the demons hidden in the soil. It is the same stomping motion that Raijin makes in the statues. The sumo wrestler is a temporary avatar of the thunder god, heavy, powerful, shaking the ground to purify it. And Raijin lives on in the feeling of the Japanese summer. Ask anyone who has lived in Japan. The summer is heavy. The humidity wraps around you like a wet blanket. The cicadas scream until your ears ring. The heat is unbearable. And then the sky turns black. The wind stops. The silence falls. And the first drumbeat sounds. Dawn! In that moment, everyone looks up. The office worker in Tokyo, the farmer in Niigata, the student in Kyoto. They feel a strange relief, because they know the break is coming. They know the rain will wash the heat away. They know that Kaminari-sama is making his rounds. We have come full circle. We started in Yomi, where the thunder was the sound of maggots and rot, a sound of horror. We end here, in the modern world, where the thunder is the sound of relief, a sound of cleansing. The journey of Raijin is the journey of humanity's relationship with nature. First, we fear the chaos. Then, we give it a name and a face to understand it. Then, we find a use for it, fertilizing the rice. Then, we see ourselves in it, the angry scholar. And finally, we accept it. We accept that we live on a volatile planet. We accept that the ground will shake and the sky will burn. But we also know that without the storm, nothing grows. Without the destruction of the fire, the forest does not renew. Without the terrifying drumbeat of the red demon, the silence of the aftermath would not be so sweet. Raijin is not a villain. He is the battery of the world. He is the static charge that keeps the heart of the earth beating. So, the next time you hear the thunder roll, wherever you are in the world, do not just hear the collision of ions. Close your eyes. See the red skin. See the wild hair. See the ring of 8 drums floating in the void. Feel the rhythm. And if you are feeling brave, maybe, just maybe, cover your belly button, just in case. This has been the saga of the drums of the sky, from the womb of the volcano to the gold of the screen. The complete story of Raijin. Thank you for listening to Hearths of Myths. If you found energy in this storm, and if you enjoyed the journey through the clouds of ancient Japan, please leave a like and subscribe. The myths are old, but the lightning is always new. May your harvests be full. May your mulberry fields be safe. And may you always find shelter when the sky turns black. If you found a strange comfort in the heart of the storm, please leave a like and subscribe to Hearths of Myths. Sleep well.